About a year ago, we started a women's initiative called Mind the Gap. Hey, thank you. And of course, we're referring to the gender gap, which of course we do mind. Last year, we looked at women in film, and this year we decided to look at women, film, and technology. There are great similarities both in the businesses of film and tech, and in the way that film is made by technicians. So we wanted to look and explore that particular topic. When we announced this earlier in the year, our friends at 20th Century Fox made the connection between the film that they have coming out later on this year, Hidden Figures, and this topic. So it was a very serendipitous connection. So we have a great moderator here today, Melina Saval, who's here with us from Variety, and I'd like to welcome her to the stage, and she will lead us on this adventure this morning. Melina.
Thank you so much. This film is going to be so extraordinary and so special. I saw the footage you're about to see last week and was so taken with it and wanted the film to be completed right away. It's almost ready. And you're probably the first audience or one of the first audiences to get to see this footage. So, you know, without further ado, I'll let you guys enjoy, but it's pretty amazing. It's about 3 female Black mathematicians who were working at NASA in the early 1960s, who basically put man into space, and it's incredibly inspiring and I think a must-see film. Math has never looked so exciting, I think. It's just great. Hopefully it'll encourage so many people to get into math, young students, because it's just so exciting. Are we short of one mic? Because I think. All right, thank you everyone. Does this work? Okay. So I want to introduce everyone. We have Elizabeth Gabler, who's president of Fox 2000. She's worked on Joy, Phone Booth, Life of Pi, Devil Wears Prada, and obviously now Hidden Figures. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you.
We've got Mimi Valdez, who's executive producer of Hidden Figures, and she's also was a producer on Dope, which was a Sundance Film Festival favorite and a wonderful movie if you haven't seen. Let's give her a warm welcome. We've got Mandy Walker, who's DP, director of photography of Hidden Figures. She also worked on Baz Luhrmann's Australia, and she's also from Australia. And we've got Marisa Paiva. I know I'm butchering that.
No, you did good.
There you go. Who's worked on such films as she's the vice president of production at Fox 2000, and she's worked on Life of Pi, Ramona, and Beezus, and we give her a warm welcome too. And the book page, which is an amazing book and an amazing film too. So welcome to everybody. And I guess, you know, Margot Lee Shetterly wrote the book upon which the film was based, but it's a little bit of an interesting story because the book hadn't yet been published before Donna Gelati, who's a producer on this project as well, got in touch with the got in touch with some of the manuscript material that was going to be published by Dutton, I believe, HarperCollins, yeah. And I think UTA had the rights to it at that point. So why don't we just start with Elizabeth. Talk a little bit about how the material came to Donna, and from that point on, how this whole movie, you know, came to you guys.
Came to life. Thank you. Well, basically, Donna had found the manuscript and had taken a section of the manuscript, which is a much broader scope. Actually, the book was just published last month, and it's a nonfiction book. It's definitely chronicling the role of African Americans in NASA. But this part of the story, which was the launch of the Mercury 7 astronauts in 1961, was the most profound for her. So she hired a screenwriter independently, Allison Schroeder, and they together developed a draft of the screenplay, which was then given to a number of filmmakers as Donna tried to package the project before it went to financiers. And Ted Melfi, our director, read the script, immediately knew that it was a movie that he had to make and fight for. He dropped out of the race to be the director of Spider-Man and attached himself to the project. And in doing so, he also brought in the production company, the Chernin Company, whom he had worked with on his movie St. Vincent's. So the Chernin Company is based at Fox, and they so graciously, and Ted, brought the project to Marissa and I and said, this is a project that we want to put together and make, and we're giving it to you guys first, and we need a fast answer. So we read it that minute and knew that it was a movie we had to go and fight for. And our chairman, Jim Giannopoulos, also, upon our bidding, read it literally overnight and said, yeah, I'll back you guys in making the movie. So it was literally a movie that was greenlit within 24 hours, and we were lucky enough to have it come to us. So that's it.
And Marissa, I'd just love to hear from you also your reaction upon reading material, and were you immediately as passionate about it as everybody else was?
Of course. I mean, I think, we at Fox 2000 do a lot of literary properties, and we're always looking for that great book, nonfiction or fiction. So to know that these women were real women, one of them, Katherine Johnson, who Taraji Henson is portraying in the film, is still alive. She's 98 years old. And she's living in Hampton, Virginia, a stone's throw from the Langley Research Center that the film takes place. So to know that these real women were out there, and then to read Allison's script, and then to have Ted come in and pitch what he hoped the movie could be, it was a no-brainer. I mean, to say overnight, Elizabeth and I were like, this is amazing. So it's not only, what we love about it is not only the history and the fact that we get to bring this untold story to now so many people, but also the portrayal of the female friendship and the portrayal of strong female characters, which is something that we try and do at Fox 2000 for every single film. So it really checked all the boxes for us in terms of things that we look for.
Just to dovetail on what you said, I was talking to Janelle Monáe on the phone, and she mentioned that this movie, these women never would have been able to do what they did had there not been that sisterhood between them. And so this movie really celebrates female friendship. And it's something I think our country is in such desperate need to see on screen. Was that something that you were really taken by that ideal as well? And were you consciously planning on building that up in the script and in the movie itself to kind of make it really pronounce the friendship between these women? Was that something?
Absolutely. I mean, I think all of us, life is very serious, and they're doing something very serious in terms of the mission and NASA, and there's really high stakes there. But ultimately, what kind of comes out of the cracks of life is the funny. And I think that, especially in the material you just saw, portrays how we are just as friends with each other and supportive both in the workplace and outside of it. So obviously in the film and things you haven't seen, we follow their lives at home as well, which is just as important to portray these fully rounded out characters, to know what they're going through, not only in their struggles in the community, segregated community and all of that, but to see them at the workplace. And so it's a balance of both. So we always wanted to show both. And you get a lot of the NASA here, and Kevin Costner and Jim Parsons and Kirsten Dunst, but you also get wonderful other actors that are portraying in their lives, like Aldous Hodge and Mahershala Ali, who play the love interests of some of the women. So you get to see their lives outside, which was just as important to us.
Yeah. And Mimi, what's so interesting about you is that you come to producing from an editorial background. You are editor-in-chief of Latina in Vibe.
Yes.
And we were just talking about how being an editor-in-chief is perfect training ground for being a producer, because you have to deal with so many creative types, so many personalities. What about this project? We were talking about, you're so passionate about it. What brought you on board?
This project, so I'm Pharrell Williams' producing partner, and we had done Dope. That was our first movie. We had done that independently. Oh, thank you. And we're represented by WME, and they had set up this meeting with Donna Gelati about another project. And we're talking, and I'm like, oh, what else are you working on? And she starts mentioning, describing Hidden Figures, and I think she was just about to sell it to you guys, and I was just like, I might have gotten on my knees. I don't even remember. It was such a blur, because I was like, we will do anything. Fro will do anything to get on this project. Maybe you don't know this, but he's from Virginia. He's been obsessed with NASA since he's a little boy. What can we do? Please, please, please. And she was like, kind of like taken aback, like, okay, hold on a second, and then I put her on the phone with Pharrell. But I think for us, because we, this is only our, second project, we just thought it was such an amazing opportunity, because how often do you get a chance to come across such an amazing story, but you know, film first and foremost should entertain, but how amazing is it that this story can not only entertain, but educate and inspire. Like that is a gift. And we were just like, please, please, please. We ended up having this meeting with Marissa and Elizabeth, and we were just so nervous because we were like, what happens if they say no and they don't let us on the project? But we're just so grateful and thankful to be a part of it.
As if.
You never know, though. You know, you're just like, you know, these crazy music people coming along wanting to be a part of a movie. So.
Well, now that you talk about the music, I mean, the music in this movie, I think already from what we've seen a little bit of it, people are going to be dancing the aisles, you know? I mean, this is like feel good, retro. I mean, this is like, you know, that early 1960s sound. So amazing. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more.
No, and what's even crazier about that was that Pharrell had been working on like 60s sounding music, but didn't really know why or what it was. And that's why when this project came across, I was like, I know exactly where that music is going to. And then of course wrote original songs, you know, once, you know, got getting into the script. But he also is working on the score with Hans Zimmer, who's, you know, a brother figure to him. He's like his older brother. And they're doing such amazing, beautiful, just unheard of, innovative stuff with the score that, again, I can't wait for you guys to see the completed film because it's really awesome.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be just incredible. And Mandy, I mean, this is a period piece. The cars are gorgeous, and the costumes are gorgeous, and you know those saturated tones, you know, used in the cinematography. Maybe tell a little bit about what your inspiration was photographing this film, because it looks absolutely stunning.
Thank you. Well, Ted and I spent a few weeks talking about, you know, inspiration and reference to this movie, and we watched a lot of other films at the time, and Eyes on the Prize is one of them, and researched a lot of stills photographers at the time that were photographing, you know, similar situations and some of the NASA photography. And two of the photographers that really jumped out at us was Danny Lyons and Gordon Parks, who were filming a lot of the, you know, struggle of segregation at the time. And then a lot of the photos were Kodachrome. And so that was kind of our inspiration for the look of the movie. And so it wasn't actually a lot of other films that we'd seen, it was mainly photography of the time. And we went around to all the locations and took our own photographs and kind of planned. We had a very specific plan for how we were going to shoot the film. And we had made what Ted called our production Bible, which was storyboards and photos that I had taken on location with Ted, where we worked out our coverage and how we would frame certain things, and also inspirational photographs. And so that was with us all the time. And you know, the other thing that Ted had done with me was gone through every scene and said to me what the story was and what was going through for the characters in each of the scenes. So it was always like an emotional approach as well.
That's great. So the screenwriter has an interesting story too. Alison Schroeder and The Ultimate Script, she worked, but I guess Ted did a rewrite, but they both get credit for writing the screenplay. I'd love to hear a little bit more about Alison. It was a writer for hire situation, and she also has a background. She grew up interning, I believe, at NASA, and had family members that were sort of in that same career field.
Yeah, she went to Stanford and she ended up interning, I believe, at NASA for a summer, and it may have continued over a fall semester, but her family was all NASA employees out of Florida, Cape Canaveral, I believe. So she had a lot of connection and always grew up hearing the stories of working there, and just kind of understood the mechanics of, obviously you see a lot takes place in hallways and offices, and I think that she approached it from that point of view of honoring the science and the math and how important that was at the time. So she worked on the script, and then Ted took it over, and we were lucky enough to have NASA constantly looking at the script and giving us notes, and they've been a wonderful organization to be paired up with, because they've made sure everything is exactly accurate. And they defer to Margot Shetterly a lot on the history, because she's really gone through their files and really found things about these women that nobody knew, even within the NASA organization, and they're so proud to now discover it and help us put it on display.
So Elizabeth, when I was talking to Janelle Monáe too, one thing she said is that when she read the script, she cried, not only because it was so moving and powerful, she cried because she didn't know about this story. Most people did not know about this story, and there was a sense of shame that came with it. What is it like to have rediscovered or kind of brought to light this important story that, for whatever reason, a multitude of reasons, it just hadn't, it's so underreported. It just hadn't gotten the attention it deserved.
I know. I mean, it's shocking because when we were talking about this just a few weeks ago, you realize, like, in all the movies you've seen about space, like, Katherine Johnson wasn't in Apollo 13, but she was an instrumental part of getting those astronauts back. And so the fact that we can tell a story that people don't know about is such an amazing experience. And I think, you know, we always see this movie, and we've always seen this movie as a big commercial film around the world too. And the fact that nobody's heard of the story is always the thing that gets their interest the most. But what we really hope, I think, is that it will encourage today's youth, and not just youth, but everybody, to look to their dreams and not to think that they can't do something. A lot of young girls don't think they could ever be mathematicians or scientists, and we really encourage the whole STEM philosophy as far as it breaking out into our culture and encouraging people to be able to explore paths that they wouldn't normally think they could do.
Absolutely. I mean, I wasn't joking when I said the math looks so exciting. I was an English major, and, you know, I mean, math is not of interest to most people, but this movie literally makes you want to go out and learn how to do quadratic equations.
Yeah.
It really does. It's treated in such a cinematic manner, and it's so exciting, and it's got elements of the right stuff in it, but it's, you know what I mean, which is great. I think this isn't really a question, but I think this film is going to have just mass appeal to so many people.
Not good.
So, and it gives us reason to be proud of our country again, and I think we need that sorely right now, without getting I think maybe let's talk a little bit about why you feel like this film will be so inspiring to, I mean, men, women, kids. I mean, I'm going to take my daughter to this, and she's 8. I don't care. She'll, you know what I mean? Like, it's not for every 8-year-old, but this is like, I want girls should see this movie, boys should see this movie. This is, dare I say, I think it's going to be a really important film.
Yeah,
We all agree. And
we
Yes,
talk about this,
absolutely.
like, the dream is that, you know, 20 years from now, some woman who, you know, she ends up doing something amazing in the fields of math and science, and when she does an interview, she says, well, it was because I saw Hidden Figures when I was 11 years old, and it inspired me to go into math. Like, that's like what we hope will happen.
won't have to wait that long.
Well, even sooner, that's even better.
Well, something else also that Marisa touched on briefly was that we, you know, there's just so many movies that are about struggle and very dark stories, and, you know, while they're true stories or fictionalized stories based on some modicum of truth, they're difficult to watch. And for us, this is a PG movie that has no violence. It doesn't sugarcoat the fact that someone has to run to the bathroom half a mile away, you know, and is given these looks by people when they walk into a room, or has to sit in the back of a bus, or can't go into the white section of the library to find a book about computer programming. It's just, for us, the story is such a positive way of telling that. And you know, you don't have to cover your eyes during scenes, and you feel like their homes were beautiful. And these women actually made a really good living. They were educated at black colleges, and they were all recruited by NASA. So they were earning very good sums of money, in their children, and they had like a very nice life for themselves. So we feel like that's just also a positive message too to put out there, and also kind of an unknown part too.
Even that first scene where they're fixing their car, right away the message is, these are capable women that don't need anybody's help. And that's that's refreshing, you know. Maybe tell me a little bit about the shoot, Mandy. How long was the shoot? How long were you on set for? What was the process like?
The shoot, I was on for about 8 weeks preparation, and our shoot was about 9 weeks long. And it was pretty quick for how much work we had to do, but because we were pretty organised, it went really smoothly. But, you know, just to follow on what you were saying, even some of the scenes when we were shooting, I would see like some, you know, fourth electrics guy weeping over in the side of the set. Like, it was quite overwhelming and moving to these performances. And I think, you know, if that early, if it's having an effect on people, you know that it's going to be something special.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're gonna have people tearing up about that math scene. It's
Yeah.
so exciting.
Yeah.
Which is what you just saw with Taraji at the chalkboard, and you ladies that were on set, please jump in. But she learned that entire equation and memorized every single digit and did it, you know, in a nice, beautiful pushed-in shot that, of course, in editorial gets ruined by reaction shots. So we need to give Taraji her due in terms of math, because she really did learn it.
She did. But there was a really great energy on set. You felt that everyone was there not just because of a check, that it really felt like everyone understood the importance of the story, and there was just such, you know, I don't know, that's something that when people would visit the set, press or whatever, would be like, gosh, like this is really nice, everyone's friendly, everyone's happy. But yeah, I think it was because everyone sort of recognized the importance of the story, and it was awesome.
It was fun too.
Yeah,
We had a lot of fun. I had to keep leaving because I had to go do other things, and I kept finding reasons to come back, which it was.
In Virginia. Was it
No, Atlanta.
Atlanta?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We actually shot NASA in this really bizarre. That's the architecture is called brutalism, and it was a mental hospital, and underneath the ground were the tunnels where the patients were transported between buildings because they weren't allowed to go out, so they wouldn't run into the woods, and it had these ghosts in it. It was really spooky. I didn't go down there either, but everyone kept saying, "Let's go into the tunnels."
Everyone kept talking about it. I was like, no thanks, I'll stay up here.
But the production design was just amazing. Wynn Thomas, who is our production designer, did the most fantastic job of transforming that place into NASA.
Yeah, that and the costumes and everything.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about casting. You know, there's really no other, I mean, in terms of the most American icon, you know, Kevin Costner is kind of the guy, you know? He just exudes American male, you know, like, ism or whatever. It's like
Heroism.
He's he's America's hero, whether it's baseball or, you know, putting a man on a rocket. He's the guy. What point did he come onto the project, and maybe just in general talk about the casting, if he came first, and how'd you get everyone on board?
Taraji came first. And Ted had a relationship with Taraji. They were close, and it was hands down his, like, I want Taraji. And we were so blessed because of her Empire schedule that we could fit the shooting into that time when she was on hiatus. And then Octavia he always wanted her to, and we worked that out. So that was fast. And then the younger role of Mary, it was interesting because there were so many talented actresses who wanted to do it, and all the roles. I mean, I think we were besieged pretty much from the casting in the movie. But Janelle just had this special quality. She's just ethereal. You look at her, and she's so beautiful, but so smart, and brought something that was so fresh to the trio. So it was blessed in that way. And then there was Kevin. It was like, look at his filmography. It's amazing, but as a filmmaker and an actor. We were so lucky that he said yes, and he was actually quite valuable. He had a lot to say about his character. He worked really closely with Ted, and I think even on set was helpful to some of the people on the NASA team on that space task group, because a lot of them were day players from Atlanta. They were actors, but he would give them little pieces of advice like, hey, did you just hear what that guy just said? You know, and so there would be elements of him that were just, I think, really filmmaker qualities that he brought to the role as well. Yeah.
Kirsten Dunst, I mean, certainly she plays a role that if you didn't know her as an actress, you might call her unlikable, but it's just of the day, I guess. I expect she's going to be really good as well. And Jim Parsons seems perfectly cast in us.
Yeah, we got really lucky. Again, everyone kind of approached it as a labor of love, so we happen to get a lot of fantastic cast, and it's nice pops throughout the movie, and everyone has their own kind of arc. So Kirsten, though, what you saw of her now, there is a nice resolution to that relationship as well.
And then, I mean, we talked briefly before just about partnering, I think, with different organizations about, you know, the educational component of the film. Maybe talk a little bit about how you're going to partner up with certain people to make sure that younger people do see this, and it's, you know, it's got a strong educational angle to it.
Well, it's exciting because Mimi and I just came from Washington, D.C., where we were at the Congressional Black Caucus, and we were on a STEM panel. And there was a major general from NASA who's flown 14 space shuttles, and people high up in the Department of Education, and just educators and people that are very active in the STEM program around the country. And I would think it was pretty much an honor for us to be there and really exciting. But we've partnered up with IBM in a big way. You'll see in the movie that IBM is a huge thing because the first big supercomputer is brought in there and they can't get it to work. And, you know, Dorothy gets it to work and our mechanic. And so we're really involved, as Marissa said, with NASA too. And we're just reaching out to student groups. I mean, you can imagine how many schools have reached out to us to have us be part of their program, and with the White House too. So it's I think we're just grateful for the outpouring of support.
Also, I mean, the fact that I didn't know that it definitively got a PG rating.
Yeah.
There's no PG movies. There's
No.
like 3 PG movies a year, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's like the last PG movie I think we saw was like E.T. or something.
No.
I mean, there's been some since, but you know, everything's PG-13 or whatever. So I love that this is really appropriate for the audience that it should be appropriate for, because young and old should see
Important,
this.
you know, it was just, we wanted 0 to 100 to be able to see the movie and bring the whole family, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a smart movie. I mean, it's not, PG doesn't mean that it's at a level that is beneath anyone. So I think, you know, we worked on Life of Pi, and that was also PG, and that had some really intellectual themes to it. And you could take away that it was just a boy in a boat with a tiger, or much more. So that's always something for us in filmmaking, to kind of speak on different levels to different audiences and it still be enjoyable to everybody.
Yeah, we actually had to remove one word from the movie because it was actually accurate. It was Alan Shepard, before they launched him, said an F word. But we couldn't have that, we're PG. And, you know, in large parts of the country, like here and other sophisticated markets, PG-13 doesn't mean anything, but to a lot of people, that does mean something. They don't want to they're very concerned about bringing in 8-year-old, and certainly we want to make it accessible to all.
No, I really admire that. I think that's really wonderful. Just, you know, I think in terms of being an awards contender, you know, it's so hard to tell, but I feel like this is sort of, it's got all the signature trappings of a movie that's going to get a lot of attention. Maybe just tell us a little bit about your plan for rollout. We're opening on Christmas Day.
Yeah, we'll be opening on Christmas Day in 15 cities in the country. There will actually be 2 theaters in the Bay Area, one in the East Bay and one in the city. And it'll be the major marketplaces, probably between 20 and 25 theaters. And then we roll out to somewhere in the 2000s on the 6th of January, and then add another 400 or 500 theaters for Martin Luther King weekend, which starts on the 13th of January. So it'll be a progressive release.
What was your favorite part about working on this film? We'll just go down. I'd just love to hear like a moment that inspired you.
There really is so many on this movie. I mean, Ted Melfi has been a complete pleasure to work with, and the team that he got together. I mean, just because I'm sitting next to her, I will say that very inspiring to me. I've never worked with a female director of photography before, so to be working with Mandy. Mandy carries her red lipstick in her light meter pack, so it's always on hand, which I very much appreciate. And I think that the more that we can have filmmaking be inclusive of so many different types of people, I think is for the better. And we've had a blast with Mandy, and she's in fact working on our next movie. So we're keeping her in the family, but that was inspiring to me from a behind the scenes aspect.
Mandy, what did you find most inspiring?
I think, well, I've always been brought up, luckily, from my parents' point of view, that being a woman doesn't restrict me in any way, and I can do whatever I want, whatever career I always was passionate about. And I'm, you know, really lucky to have had that. And so I think that really affected me on this film, that these other women were in similar, you know, well, different position, but they all were very strong, and much harder for them in the time that they were in the situation that they were in being a woman and being African American, and just being very humble and you know, but strong, and that inspired, that had a big effect on me, I think, and I want my daughter, you know, to feel that way, and I think it's very important for that reason.
How about you, Mimi? I mean, you so badly wanted to work on this film,
gosh,
and you
yeah.
got to work in this film.
Then it was a dream come true. I mean, again, like Marissa said, I mean, there's so many moments that were just so amazing, but I think to see a movie like this, because I grew up the same way. I went to all-girl Catholic high school, grew up with my mom and my grandmother, and it was always like, women can do everything, and I heard that a lot growing up, but you know, in movie, you know, history, you don't really get to see that level of female brilliance. I mean, these women were brilliant, like geniuses, and you don't get to see that in movies, and media images, as we know, are so important. So to be able to work on a film that can kind of help change the landscape is just incredible.
And lastly, Elizabeth Gabe.
Well, I have to say, I think my inspiration just keeps going. Today was inspiring for me, seeing all of you see this footage and hearing your reaction. And it's happened every time, from the first time we previewed the movie to this minute. And so I think it's just seeing people smile and be happy to see it that is keeping me going.
When I saw the footage on the Fox lot, there was maybe like 6 of us, and we all walked out like, wow, that was amazing. We were all so incredibly excited about it. Let's turn it over to some questions from the audience. Who would like to ask a question? How about you in the back? Do we have someone with a mic who's going to go around, or is this? Just talk loud.
I love the scene where you're talking about the first person. And I'd like to ask each of the panelists, were you a first at anything in your family? Or have you opened the door to someone in your life to help them be a first?
Well, I am the first. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, so I was the first to get everything, the shots, the dentist appointment, the whole 9 yards. But I also feel like at our company, we've been able to give a number of people internships, and so that would be their first jobs. And blessedly, Marissa was one of them when she was in college, and has, you know, just been promoted to senior vice president, I can tell you all. So I guess being the first to give somebody a start is the best for me. Thank you. Great question.
Yeah, I mean, neither one of my parents even graduated from high school, so I was the first to go away to college. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I was blessed enough. Elizabeth was the commencement speaker at my graduation, so this is all really full circle for the 2 of us. But my parents always valued education, so in terms of being the first, though I was the first to go away to college, it was and to go to college with my family, it was always valued, and so to have a movie that is so crucial towards education is really a blessing for me to be able to put that out in the world.
Well, as was said before, there's not many women who do my job, and I'm always encouraging other students, and I did some teaching at UCLA, and I try to have female interns in my department as well. And I have to say, thanks to Fox, I was the first woman cinematographer to shoot a film over $100 million, which was Australia.
I was the first in my family to go to college, and I think just because I'm born and raised in the projects in New York City, not a lot, well, thank you. But you know, when you grow up with not a lot of money, there's not, and especially when you kind of look all around you, and you know, people aren't doing necessarily, you know, not much. And my mom's dream for me was to be a doctor or a lawyer. I didn't do that. I went into journalism. But yeah, I mean, it's just interesting because I find myself being a lot of times just the first in, you know, there's not a lot of people that are women of color in different, you know, whether it was in journalism or, you know, working in music or working in Hollywood. So it's always, you always kind of feel like, you know, it's always a weird sort of place to be, but it's been awesome. And I never kind of, never got discouraged by that, I guess, in terms of, being the first.
So I'm so excited to see this entire movie. I cannot wait. I've got my 14-year-old here looking inspired. We've already made plans for Christmas Day. I can't help but wonder if this film had been made 50 years ago, the impact that it would have had on the direction of our society. I feel like part 2 is almost, why was this not told? And I'm wondering if you feel like the success of this film, which we're all anticipating, clearly will enable you to tell more stories like this so that we can accelerate the progress of our women of color, and other untold stories as a result.
Well, for me, whenever I get asked questions about, like, why aren't there more movies for women, I have to say, then people need to go buy tickets when we make them. And we have made them, and it's difficult because oftentimes, the more commercial movies take the place of the choice. And that's why these big special effects movies and superhero movies and even R-rated comedies now and action films, they're the movies that primarily come out of the big Hollywood studio systems, because it's difficult for us to make the movie that's a more dramatic film that has a female-driven plot or female leads. So the answer is people have to go out of their houses and buy tickets and go to the theaters so that we can keep doing it. So as you said, please, God, let this be a success so we can keep doing it, and it'll become a front runner for people to say, well, they made that one work, so we can try this one. And that's just something that I hope happens for all of us.
Also, another interesting thing, I don't know if people have thought about this, but Meryl Streep at Variety, we were talking to her, and she said something so interesting and obvious and easy. When you go to Rotten Tomatoes, you might not think of Rotten Tomatoes as like anything that really kind of affects the climate of filmmaking, but it does, because people go on Rotten Tomatoes to see what movie they should see. And they did a study, I think it's like 85% of are men who post and who write about things there. So go on Rotten Tomatoes as a woman and talk about every film you've seen starring women, about women, made by women, and that will up their percentages and get more people to go see the movie. And it's something we can all do.
You've had your hand up. Yes, you have. Yes.
Of course, now I have more questions. But first, I just have to say that I had an instant, oh, please win the Oscar.
Thank you.
Crazy about this. I have lots of weird connections. My father worked at McDonald's, which has to do with the mercury. I had no idea this was going to be about that. And I just am very excited. But I have as a civil rights activist from that time, I'm trying to get what the judge said could happen. How could it be that the federal government had changed some laws, but Virginia had a law higher than the federal government? To me, that sounds like Bull Connor and the sheriff and so forth talking, not a judge. So does it get explained somewhere in another, or maybe in your DVD or something? How could that be?
I believe from our research from the time with historians that the state could proceed certain ways against even federal laws. So I think that is accurate. I mean, we've had many people look at this, so I believe that is accurate on some level.
Because the Supreme Court of Virginia ruled that it was a segregated state.
Just were not listening.
But whether they did or not, they did.
Yeah.
They did.
Yes. Yes,
Exactly.
no, you and I are on the same page. It's about custom and it's about power, but to say it's the law, that really threw me.
Well, I think we're talking about a time where, we've made a lot of strides. Things were like that back then. This was like accepted practice amongst, so I think they got away.
Well, there is a brief shot in the movie of protesters protesting segregation. When you see Dorothy walk by with her two boys, you'll see it when you see the movie. But there definitely was protesting going on about the fact that Virginia was doing this. But we don't specifically get into the explanation of the civil rights laws at the time. We very consciously made an effort not to make this movie about specifically civil rights, because we had another story to tell. And so while it's very prevalent there, and there are very, very specific instances where you see it in the movie repeatedly, the segregation, you also see the walls breaking down too. And that was our story. So, you know, but maybe we can add something. We haven't done our DVD yet, so thank you.
Yes, here.
I actually can't speak loudly. Because I speak a lot. September Williams, International Federation of Journalists, and I am both a physician and a bioethicist as well. So when I look at, I'm crazy. So when I look at the film, I love it. I also went to film school. I love it. It reminds me very much in some ways of sort of the back half of The Butler, which didn't do well, I believe, because it dealt with the middle class black community. And there's something about 12 Years a Slave, or something that's the brutal story of how things happen, that seems to be more focused on in the broader US community. You gotta see people be beaten physically before you can identify with them. So what I noticed about the clip that I saw was that is this balance, that it's not all about civil rights, that there were people and are people who get it together by some means against the odds, or they just have natural talent. Did you talk about that to do it? Or did you just go by the book? Or did you say, hey, this is gonna be a story about smart middle class black women and other women who are working? Was it conscious?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well, you want to, well, for one thing, I mean, we did a lot of research. I mean, these people, men and women, were educated, highly educated people. And so we very much were really clear that we wanted to make a film that was positive. And this original script had all of that in it. And so the balance of how much story you can tell, I mean, we could have told a lot more story and it would have been a 3-hour movie. So we had to hone it down through many different cuts and decisions that were made, you know, primarily by Ted, but with a great deal of collaboration to, again, bring the positive message out. I mean, our company, through another division, has Birth of a Nation, which is a very, very, very different film. And we wanted this to be a very different film. Because again, to reach an audience of younger people, you can't subject them to that kind of sophistication. And this, we felt, was a way to let everybody be, you know, part of this experience, and in a really uplifting way. Does that answer that?
No, I think there's so much. Yeah, there's so much universality to this film, and I think it's about humanity. And it's not just about a person's color, and it's not just about a person's gender. I think it's about issues that are so much largely more important than that, which is what I think the film is doing and will do really, really well. Who else do we have that has a question? Yes, you, going like that.
Hi, could you all briefly discuss, you know, what you do or what your role is in the movie? Because many times behind the scenes producers or gaffers, I mean, we don't know what they do. And you'll see them splashed on the screen, executive producer, co-producer, producer, that producer, that kind of thing. Could you kind of briefly describe what you all do?
Well, it's easier to start with the top.
Not the top. The buck stops here. Okay, so I am president of Fox 2000 Pictures, which is a division of 20th Century Fox Film Corporation. And we are a division that brings movies of all sizes to the world, from, actually, we've mentioned both, two very different ones here. One was Life of Pi, which was a very expensive and groundbreaking film, but very expensive. And this movie, which was made for a very, very limited budget, because everybody sacrificed and did it for a price, because it was a risk. So we don't have, Marissa and I both work for 20th Century Fox. So when you see the film, you'll see a credit that says Fox 2000 Pictures. That's us, not our names. But what we are is we're executives at this company. And unlike some executives in film studios, we're very producerial in our approach to our movies. We don't develop a lot of movies. We develop probably 75% of our development. It comes from literary material, whether it's nonfiction like this, or fiction, or even magazine articles, or even just true stories, or you know, everything. And so we are responsible for the creative and financial decisions at the end of the day. And we work really closely in support of our filmmakers, and we believe that we're partners and that they are, you know, they need our support in every way. So that's our role, and you can add to it because you do more of the day-to-day than I do.
Yeah, I mean, as a kind of lieutenant for Elizabeth, I guess you could say, I'm the day-to-day person keeping in contact with everybody on the ground, in this case in Atlanta. And we also like to go down and hang out too, because it's very fun. And so we just make sure everybody is happy, both in terms of how the shoot is going and everything thereafter in post-production and for release. But we're liaisoning with all of our departments at Fox, and there's an entire team of people with executives from visual effects and executives from music, and the entire team of people that are overseeing every aspect for those in Atlanta to make sure everything is happening properly and on budget, as Elizabeth said, which is important also. But mainly it's to make sure that we're making the best version of the movie possible, and that's always our goal at the end of the day.
And we see it through development, through all the way through international release. So we kind of have the gamut of the whole life of a film.
Right. And then, as you know, a producer is the top position on the movie. As an executive producer, we're sort of kind of supporting the producers, but it really, gosh, it goes to everything. I mean, I was on set every day. You're, you know, just making sure, helping the director make sure that he's supported and making sure that his vision is executed, as well as all of his support staff, whether it's cinematography to wardrobe, and just sort of being there on set for anything that happens, and just making sure, you know, we're responsible obviously to the studio and kind of giving them updates when they're not there, but just making sure that nothing goes off the rails. It's basically, you know, it's like hoping that fires don't happen, but being there to put them out when they do occur.
My job is the director of photography, and what I do is, again, help the director get their vision to the screen. So I work with them in understanding the story that they want to tell, and I'm in charge of the lighting, the gripping, which is the camera movement, and setting up the you know, dollies and cranes, and working out exactly how we're going to cover the film to be able to tell the story, and also the camera department. And I work with the director in making sure that their vision gets onto the screen.
So, but can you said it in the beginning, can you say again how you found out about this book before it became published, or the story?
Well, the way I found out about it first was both from the production company, the Chernin Company, who is based at Fox, and also from Ted Melfi, because we had been trying to work with Ted, and we had been giving him all sorts of material and begging him to come and make a movie at Fox 2000, and he found this because he had read it through his agency, and it was already the screenplay, and so he basically said, you have to read this. And it was the same day was that one of the executives who runs the Chernin Company production, Jenno Topping, she called, and he called me and said, you guys have to read it. And you got it from them the same day too, right?
Yeah, Elizabeth was actually on vacation, and so I responded with,
I was in Nicaragua.
read this, but Elizabeth's in Nicaragua, and 5 minutes later she wrote back, I'm just by the pool, I could read it right now. So, so that happened, again, really, really fast, and here we are. You know, we got that script sent to us, I think, June 29th or June 30th.
Yeah, 29th, yeah.
And here we are now, you know, a little over a year later.
Yeah.
No, last year.
Last year.
But we would have been, it would have been pretty unusual for us to have seen this type of nonfiction book, because it's interesting, the book itself is actually more of a textbook, and it's published by our sister company, an imprint, Morrow, which is HarperCollins is within the News Corporation family, which is part of our whole company. And but it would have been like a needle in a haystack for us to actually uncover that at that stage. However, there is a young adult version of the book written, which is much more, I think, user-friendly for reading the story. But it's not the movie story. specifically as far as what you would read if you read the book. It's fascinating and amazing. It's a lot of stories. Yeah. Hidden Figures. It just was literally published, what, two weeks ago? Yeah.
This is in the book. This is like 1961. Like it's a very small. There's so many other stories. You could probably pluck a bunch out and make like 10 more films. If you wanted to. Yeah. If anyone's interested, we could do that. Okay, we got 5 more minutes. We have time. How about last 3 questions? So how about you? And you. So yes, you.
Were you able to produce a film that was historically accurate? So many important historical stories are made into films, and it turns out that they're not totally accurate, and that there are parts of it that are added for audience interest or to make it more romantic or whatever. But it would be nice to know that how much emphasis was put on that, and whether a historian, an American historian ideally, was brought on board that might be an expert in that time in history to help with that issue, or was that not important?
No, it's incredibly important, and Marisa can speak to that too. But we have had constant contact with not only NASA but IBM, and the NASA team signed off on this. Now, that being said, anytime you make a movie, it's basically an adaptation. You do need to take artistic license. There are definitely some scenes in the movie that were not exactly true, that didn't happen as we depict them, but they could have. And we never, ever stretched beyond the realm of credibility. And in fact, there were things shot that weren't exactly what happened, and we elected not to have them in the movie as much as we wanted to, because we felt like it was pushing it just too far. So someone coming to this movie will absolutely see a true depiction of the things that happened. These women were responsible for the Mercury 7. They had those roles in NASA, and the Kevin Costner character, Al Harrison, is an amalgamation of several different people that worked in the Space Task Force, but he was combined into one for the movie. And you can
I think
jump in.
The big moments that you saw today are all things we got from Katherine Johnson herself. Even at 98, we got to go visit her and sit and speak, and she did have to run half a mile to the bathroom, and she had that was her path. And at the end of the movie, and you saw a little bit in the sizzle, John Glenn did say, "Get the girl to check the numbers." I mean, that is quoted from him. So, the big moments, though there is obviously, as Elizabeth said, dramatization to certain things, the really big moments and parts of these women, it was really important for us to stay accurate. And like we said, we've had NASA and historians pour over it to make sure that we're depicting things as they could have been and as they were.
Yeah. Kevin Costner doesn't work at NASA. He could, though. He probably could.
No, but even when we were in Washington and the NASA guys were all there, I mean, they were like, they had just seen the movie 2 days before, and they were, yes, we can't believe, like the woman who paints on she paints the Friendship 7 on John Glenn's capsule, and there's an actor painting it in the movie. They were so excited that she was there. Yeah.
Okay, 2 quick questions. Yes, you. Yeah. In recent years, your industry has been criticized for minimizing the diversity, racial diversity in movies. And other than as executives, was there any effort to have racial diversity other than the talent and Pharrell and Mimi?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our production designer, Wynn Thomas, is African American. I mean, I think it was an absolute choice. But I'll be really clear about this. We greenlit this movie and were making this movie before any of the hue and cry started last year around the award season. This was a movie that we were making because we loved it. And while we completely embraced it, it wasn't a reactionary move on our part to make a movie. So yes, absolutely. I mean, look, I made Waiting to Exhale and How Stella Got Her Groove Back as an executive at Fox. So those were, I think, front runners in a lot of ways too. This is a world we live in that I believe should be a movie that every movie should have. I mean, Fox 2000 made Drumline. I mean, we've been so aware that this is a big world that needs so many stories to be told. And so I think just our little group has tried so hard to be.
Yeah, I mean, the next movie we're making is a movie called The Mountain Between Us, which again, Mandy will be the director of photography, and we're making that with Idris Elba and Kate Winslet. So at every stage, we've tried to kind of, again, just hire the best person for the job, and that's always the goal.
Also, this is like a whole other discussion. Just briefly, because at Variety, I'm not making this, trying not to make this about me at all, but there's so many reasons that go in to why Hollywood is the way it is right now, and something a lot of people don't think about is you're not necessarily getting women and people of color going to film schools. So we did a whole issue all about that. I'd be happy to talk to you about that too, because there's a lot more going to it than just the studios not making the movies that you feel should be made. It's a whole kind of trickle down. So just and oh, sorry, does anyone else?
No. I mean, I think our cast and crew above the line, below the line was very diverse. It was really nice to see that, and I think for Pharrell and I, it's one thing that is important to us, diversity, but Elizabeth's track record, she has, probably the most amazing track record in Hollywood for diversity, so it wasn't a problem there. But yeah, I think it's, like you said, it goes beyond just studios. It's, people going to film schools and, getting these jobs to be able to greenlit, so.
Yeah. One more question. I promised it to somebody. Yes, you. I promised you, so it's the last question, unfortunately.
Was there an effort, or did you feel that there was a need to try and tone down the element racism played in order to make it more accessible to a mainstream commercial audience?
No, it wasn't about that. I mean, like Elizabeth mentioned earlier, it was more about, we could have told the story in so many different ways, and it just felt like, we've seen the civil rights story, we've seen, we've seen that. Let's concentrate on these women and kind of their amazing journey working at NASA and these amazing accomplishments that really changed the course of American history. This is an American story, and I think, so it wasn't really about that. It was just like, let's concentrate on what makes the story special and stick to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you all so much. This movie is going to be so great. I'm so excited.